My sense of the early vote is it is not as disastrous as it was in the first 3 days for the Democrats, but it's still really bad. And the Harris campaign has done a great job of spinning the national media on it. And when you talk to people in the states, whether there's two categories of people in the states. There's more junior people who don't lie about the data and what it means. What you have now is tons of senior Democrats are in the states. They're door knocking, like people who've run presidential campaigns are literally going to Michigan and Pennsylvania and door knocking. And those people are honest with me because they're worried and they're not in the business of like Wilmington is. They're really worried. Okay, they may be wrong. They may be wrongly worried. The Pennsylvania numbers, when they come out today, if she's below 400,000 vote lead compared to Biden's lead in 2020, it's going to be problematic for her. What is the biggest indication that we've seen that the early vote is a problem for her? It's Jim Messina talking to Jen Psaki. Jim Messina, if you go watch his cable TV appearances, he has been, first for Biden and then for Harris, the most boosterish person about them. Just rose-colored. Everything that's going on with Biden and Harris is fantastic. Here he is with Jen Psaki talking about the early vote. Please play 103.
Okay, what's their biggest concern right now if you're the Harris team?
Well, look, I think it's a couple things. The early vote numbers are a little scary, and you and I have been texting back and forth. Republicans didn't do what they did last time. Last time Trump said don't early vote, and so they didn't. Republicans do have an advantage in early vote numbers. When the early vote come in, it's going to look a little bit different than 2020, and that's scary. Scary.
So Dan, decode that for people who aren't familiar with Jim Messina. How scary is it that Jim Messina says it's scary?
It's scary. I mean, it's brutal honesty. And you look at every major urban center in the swing states, and there is not one, not Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Phoenix, where Democrats are doing well. And the problem is it's two voting blocks. It's Blacks, Latinos, people of color, and young voters. They're not seeing the turnout yet that they feel that they're going to need. So the issue is, can you make it up in the suburbs or with older voters, as you talked about with Ann the other day? But something's got to give. Otherwise, it's hard to see, where the numbers are going to come from.
Sean, what you respond, I just want you to incorporate one other question in your answer, not as a partisan, but as a practitioner. Is it possible that the turnout operation of the Harris campaign, which has failed to some extent in the early, will be better on same day, on election day voting tomorrow?
So the thing that I want people to understand is that what Republicans did was change a pattern. For example, me, I'm an election day voter. I was like, you know what? If I'm going to preach it, I got to go do it. So I went and voted early and urged everyone to do it and got them to do it, right? Democrats are early voters by nature and by practice, right? So the question is, if they're not doing it now, why? Right? I mean, in theory, you're right. They could still show up tomorrow in droves, but that defies, it's the opposite, right? It's sort of, it doesn't make sense. Now, so it's possible, but it's, again, this goes back to why Republicans changed our behavior, because we were told, hey, bank that vote. It saves us money. It's, we don't have to worry about existential threats to that, weather or, childcare issues, what have you, that could potentially keep you from voting. You have to question why Democrats aren't doing it unless they aren't voting. And that's the big question. Like, do they just want to wait for one more commercial? Maybe, but that does not portend well for her. And so I think obviously, there's always the possibility, but it is not a good sign for the other side. And look, I think the cool part is when you look at some of the statistics, Allegheny County is one that comes to mind in Pennsylvania, Western PA. 87% of people there tend to vote early, Republicans. And when you look at how well we're doing there, only right now about 9% are election day voters, meaning you still got a lot that can show up on election day as well. So that's a very positive sign for Team Trump. They got a lot of people who tend to show up, but they still got a lot of people who are either low propensity or first-time voters to come.
Mark, can I just add the one piece of, because again, Democrats are very worried about Blacks and young voters not
and Hispanic.
And Hispanic, absolutely. Well, and just her performance with Hispanics in general.
Correct.
the Harris campaign believes they are not seeing the bro vote so far in early vote. Doesn't mean they won't turn out on election day, but there is some comfort that at least while Democrats are underperforming with that group that might be the key, they don't quite see a surge yet.
And we're seeing, I mean, that's universal, right? So you got a lot of young college kids that are all fired up for Trump, but haven't shown up, at least in the data. One last thing, I just from the audience standpoint, because we've been asked this before on the Messina comments. Look, when you're a guy like Messina, I think, Mark, you framed this well. Like, he's got a lot of credibility at stake. And so he does not want to go overboard and be exuberant for Kamala if he knows this was a warning signal to them saying, hey, I'm still with you, but. And that's the thing that people have to understand is that there are people on both sides that are still for their person, but they've got to be careful because they don't want their credibility to be damaged, saying there's no question she's going to win. So I take that Messina warning very seriously.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know exactly why he did it, but I think the fact that he did it says things are a problem. All right.
Well, and by the way, Mark, the fact that he dropped that Jen Psaki and probably the whole, 2012 senior leadership is on a text chain, and we've all been talking about this, right?
Yeah.
That was another like, ooh.
Yeah. And I won't show the Axelrod clip. Axelrod was not quite as negative as Messina, but he was pretty negative too, and leaning into the traditional role of David Axelrod, which is to trash any Democratic presidential campaign he's not working on.